Hello Nidorinas and Nidorinos, I'm KingNido, and today it is the Levere Constrictors going up against the Kitakami Rogues, as both these sides have a great deal riding on this. For the Levere Constrictors, they're guaranteed a spot in Victory Road, but they want to be in at least second or third to ensure that they will have a second chance, whereas for the Kitakami Rogues, they're trying to ensure they do not end up with that wooden crown. So with that said, let us know in the comments below who you think is going to win this matchup. Will it be the Psychic decks? Will it be the Darkness decks? Let's go!
3, 2, 1, go!
And going first, it is going to be the Sentinel Clones deck of the Levere Constrictors. So they've got the Mewtwo and they've got the Ralts in hand as they put that Mewtwo into the active spot with that Ralts on the bench. For the Rogues, they're going with their Poison Pins deck, using that Zubat into the active spot as they have no other basic Pokemon, but they've got that Professor's Research in hand. As we said though, the Constrictors going first, they pull the second Mewtwo, and they've already got those two Mythical Slabs in hand. They're going to play the first one, and it is going to be the second Curlier being taken out of their deck. Surely they're going to play that second one here to thin this deck a little bit more, and it is going to be the Pokeball that is going to go to the bottom of their deck. It would have only worked if it was a Psychic type card, and they are going to put that Mewtwo onto the bench here, as the Kitakami Rogues do pull the Nidoking. They've got the Nidorinos, yes, it is the Nidorinos, not the Nidorinas, in hand, and they get a Pokeball thanks to that Professor's Research plus the Nidorino female, and they get a second Nidorino female. Now they've got the Nidoqueen, but they need the Nidorina to try and get that evolution online. In the meantime though, this Zubat is online, and with this Glide it will do an additional 20 damage because that Mewtwo is weak to the Darkness types here. So that Glide only typically does 10 damage. As the second Ralts has been pulled for the Levere Constrictors, they can get one of these Curliers online here and start getting these energies onto the Mewtwo here that is in the active spot. However, it requires 4 energy to start going for that Power Blast, as the second Nidoqueen has been pulled for the Kitakami Rogues. And the Rogues thinking about putting the Nidorino female online, that second one, onto the bench, but they can't. They're opting not to, at the moment, and they still can't evolve them. However, they can go for the Call for Family if they put that in the active spot and get a Nidorino male out of that deck. They need to think though, do they want to keep going with this Zubat chipping away at the Mewtwo? And that is what they're going for. It is going to do another 30 damage, and already this Mewtwo in the active spot is down to half of its health as the Constrictors have just pulled their Gollet. They're going to evolve that second Ralts into a Curlier now, and they're going to start setting up that benched Mewtwo instead. They are worried clearly that this Mewtwo will be taken offline very soon, as the Rogues have just pulled their Nidorina. So they're going to evolve this Nidorino female here, and this Glide continuing to chip away at this Mewtwo now. And one more hit on this Mewtwo and it will be taken down by a Zubat, but the Constrictors have now pulled the Gardevoir. They can start using that Psy Shadow to generate extra psychic energy, although now may not be the time unless they want to retreat this Mewtwo. They are going to get an energy onto it, and they may retreat. No, they're going to let it get taken down, as Zubat is going to defeat a Mewtwo here in the PokeType League VGC. But at first, it's the Nidoqueen coming online, and it's the second Nidoking in hand for the Kitakami Rogues as well. But they still need a Nidorino male, as they do put that second Nidorino female onto the bench. This Glide from the Zubat, and they keep going back and forth. They are hesitant at the moment. Cleverly though, they didn't put down their Darkness energy for the turn, but here it is, the Glide from the Zubat to take the Mewtwo off the board. Fantastic work from the Kitakami Rogues as they're trying to keep themselves away from that wooden crown position, whereas the Levere Constrictors, they want a good placing in our first ever Victory Road. But it's the second Gardevoir being pulled for the Levere Constrictors. They can start maximizing their energy production here. They can use both Psy Shadows to get an energy onto the Mewtwo, getting it up to that 4 required energy, and they can start using these Energy Zone produced energies and start setting up these benched Gardevoirs. But here is the Power Blast absolutely wiping this Zubat off the board. And now the Kitakami Rogues are going to send out their Nidoqueen. Now, none of those Nidokings are online, so this Love Strike will not be doing additional damage. It will still do 80 plus the additional, thanks to that weakness that Mewtwo has, as the Golbat is just pulled for the Rogues, but one turn too late, as the Love Strike 100 damage onto the Mewtwo. But this Mewtwo can only get 120 onto this Nidoqueen as they pull the Professor's Research. They're going to play that immediately. They get a Golok, they get the second Professor's Research as well, they can start getting energy onto this Golett as well, but the Golett requires a 4 psychic energy, as once again these Psy Shadows getting the 2 required energy onto the Mewtwo. They are going to get this Nidoqueen down to 20 health, but it can outlast a Power Blast from Mewtwo. Not many Pokemon in Season A1 can say they can manage that, but here it is. 120 damage, and the Nidoqueen holds on as it comes back over to the Kitakami Rogues, who pull the Professor's Research. They are going to play that immediately, getting an additional 2 cards. It's the second Nidorina, and they finally get a Nidoran male as well. And that Nidorina is now online, getting its second energy as well, as these Nidoqueens require 3 energy. And the Kitakami Rogues taking a moment to think whether or not they want to go on the offensive with this Nidoqueen, and that is exactly what they're going to do. 100 damage to wipe this Mewtwo off the board, as the Rogues are trying to ensure they do not drop down to 9th place. They were the last team to get a victory this season, as we now see the Leviathan Constrictors sending out their Gardevoir. They've just pulled a Giovanni, but they can play the Professor's Research instead if they want. And they need to think about how they want to address this. They're going to get an energy onto one of these Gardevoir, onto the bench Gardevoir, sorry, but they play the Professor's Research, they get the second Golurk, and they're going to play the Pokeball. They're going to get the Golett out of the deck as well, and it can get this Golett online. There's no more basic Pokemon in that deck. They're all in hand. A Psy Shadow is going to get a second energy onto this active Gardevoir, as I'm tripping over my words, and the active Gardevoir uses its own Psy Shadow to get another energy, and here it is. The Psy Shot is going to wipe this Nidoqueen off of the board. It is 2 points each. The next point will win game 1, and regardless of what happens in game 2, we will be going to a game 3, because every match counts towards the leaderboard here in regulation season. But here it is, the Nidorina is online in the active spot. They can go for another Love Strike, because now that Nidoqueen is online, it requires this third energy, as the Nidorinos are being set up on the bench as well. They've got those Nidokings waiting in hand, but here it is, the Love Strike, 80 damage, plus the additional 20. This active Gardevoir has 10 health remaining. Second Pokeball being pulled for the Leviathan Constrictors, but that is irrelevant now. They can play it if they choose to, but there is nothing in that deck, and they seem well aware of it, as they're going to retreat that active Gardevoir. They're going with the Golurk in the active spot. This can get online immediately. If it gets 2 heads, it will take this Nidoqueen out, but it only gets 2 chances. If one of them is a heads, it will do 100 damage. If both are tails, it will do nothing. This is a massive moment. They're going to use the Giovanni as well, just to try and get an additional 10 damage here. The Leviathan Constrictors with this double Lariat, 100 for each heads. Here we go. And it's a tails. The Nidoqueen is safe, but they do get 1 head, so 110 damage being done to the Nidoqueen, sorry. But it still has 30 health remaining, and they can get this Nidoking online. This will allow the Love Strike to do an additional 50 damage. This move is going to do 150 to wipe this Golurk off the board. They did not have to wait to put the energy on. They were being respectful, maximizing that damage still though, and they take game 1 to the Kitakami Rogues. And in doing so, this is practically ensured that they will not take the Wooden Crown. That will be the Petalburg Razors. So the Leviathan Constrictors need to win the next 2 games. They're starting out with their, they're now using their Magic Show deck, but it is the Rogues who flipped heads, going first with their Toxic Energy. They put that Purloin into the active spot with the Grimer on the bench. It is the Drowsy for the Leviathan Constrictors. Now the Constrictors, as we said, need to win the next 2 games to try and get the best possible position on the leaderboard that they can heading into Victory Road. It's the Muck being pulled for the Kitakami Rogues, and they've got that Lipard in hand as well, plus the Koga and the X-Speed, as they send it over to the Leviathan Constrictors, who pull the Floette. They don't have a Flabébé though. They've got 2 Floettes, a Florges, they've got the Hypno, and they've got the Potion, getting that first energy onto the Drowsy, who does require 2 energy to start doing damage. But this is great for the Kitakami Rogues, because they've got that Lipard in hand, and it only requires 1 energy to do 60 damage with this Slash. And the reason it will be doing 60 damage is because that Drowsy there is weak to the darkness types. And the Rogues were thinking about evolving that Grimer into the Muck, but the Muck does require 3 energy to start getting online, so they're clearly waiting to do that, as the Leviathan Constrictors pull a basic Pokemon, being the Flabébé, and they needed that one in hand, as the Hypno now online for the Leviathan Constrictors. They're trying to keep That Drowsy's safe. They have evolved it. It can't outlast the Lipard, but this coin flip gets the heads, and it is going to put Lipard to sleep thanks to that sleep pendulum ability of Hypno. They're also going to play the potion to try and restore a bit of health for the Hypno here, but it still can't get on the offensive as it requires 3 energy. The Kitakami Rogues need to flip a heads, but they flip a tails, and that is what the Constrictors need, because this keeps the Lipard fast asleep on the board. And whilst that is the case, the Rogues also can't retreat this Lipard to the bench, as they've pulled a second muck, and they now are going to evolve this Grimer. They are looking at the Lipard, but as we said, they cannot retreat it, so they're going to have to end their turn. This coin flip will be ahead, so it's going to wake up the Lipard, but surely the Constrictors are once again going to try and put it to sleep. But first, they've also pulled the Sabrina. They may want to play that and send the Lipard back to the bench as they evolve the Flabébé into the Floette. Here it is, the Sleep Pendulum now. And they get a heads once again. This is fantastic for the Constrictors. They get that 3rd energy here onto the Hypno, and this Side Punch will do 50 damage to the Lipard. Now the Rogues have an opportunity with their own coin flip once again. This time they need the heads, and they get it, which is great because this Lipard now will wake up and it will be able to take this Hypno off the board. They've pulled the Scolipede, but they don't have a Venipede or a Whirlipede in hand yet, or even on the bench. As that Muck gets its 2nd energy, they do play the potion to restore a bit of health for the Lipard as well, but this Slash is going to take Hypno off the board, and the Kitakami Rogues have taken the first point here in game 2. And now we see that Flabébé being put into the active spot, as the Constrictors have also just pulled the Jinx, who gets stronger if the opposing Pokemon has more energy on it. This Bloomshine from Florges they're looking at requires 2 energy, and there is no energy on this Flabébé that is now a Florges yet. However, it has 120 health, and it is weak to the metal types, so it will not be taking an additional 20 damage from this Lipard like we were seeing done to the Hypno, as it is now the Venipede being pulled for the Kitakami Rogues. They immediately put it onto the bench, and they're going to play the X speed as well. They're going to get this Muck online. Surely it is the retreat. They're putting the Muck into the active spot. It only requires 1 more energy here. And with that, this Venoshock does 70 damage to the Florges. This will be back and forth because this Florges can do 80 damage to the Muck, and with that Bloomshine it will also restore 30 of its own health as well, taking it out of being in elimination range of this Muck. But here it is, the Bloomshine, unless they're opting to play the Sabrina, and that no, they're not going for the elimination yet. They're holding off. They're really thinking about how they want to address this. They've got the Psychic on the Jinx, but it has no energy yet, so here it is, the Bloomshine onto the Muck, and there it is. Sorry, I said 30, it's only 20, so Florges is still in elimination range, which means that this Muck can wipe this Florges off the board. But there's that first energy onto the Venipede as well, but here is the Venoshock taking the Florges out of this match, and this is terrible for the Constrictors because this Jinx will also be weak to the Muck, and it has no energy on it yet. Now, this may have been a critical error, or potentially they were well aware and they just want to get as much damage onto this Muck as possible. I'm not sure what the Constrictors were thinking here. But now they are in a moment where they are surely going to drop this game. They can play the Sabrina, but it's up to the Rogues who they want to put into that active spot. The Constrictors may have made a mistake because they're probably not going to get any points in this game too. They're going to play the Sabrina. They thought of ending their turn. There it is, the Sabrina being played. The Rogues taking their time. They're going to go with the Lipard, who already has an energy on it, so it can retreat using that energy here. But the Constrictors end their turn. They must be hoping that the Rogues make a mistake here, but the Rogues are in full control. They're not worried about the energy. They're going to get that Muck straight back into the active spot. And with this Venoshock, they're going to ensure they win this series. They take both Game 1 and Game 2. This is terrible for the Levere Constrictors. They are running the risk of going into Victory Road, losing 3 straight matches, losing a clean sweep series to the Kitakami Rogues. And the Rogues flipping heads. They are going with that Rocket's Pursuit deck to finish off against the Twisted Spoon deck of the Levere Constrictors. It's the Meowth in the active spot for the Rogues. And it is the Ghastly for the Levere Constrictors with the Abra on the bench. But here we go, game 3. This still counts towards the leaderboard, but this is not good for the Levere Constrictors. They will probably be staying in 4th, if not dropping down to 5th place, which means if they lose their first game, their first series in Victory Road, they will be eliminated straight away. No second chances. The Rogues pull the Persian, they send it over to the Levere Constrictors, who pull the Ghastly. They play the Professor's Research, they get an LGM and an Alakazam. They don't have a Kadabra yet, but they play the Mythical Slab, and they get the Kadabra. That is a fantastic setup, so they can very quickly start getting this Abra online, but first they're going to put that LGM onto the bench. And a suffocating gas from the Ghastly chipping away here at the Meowth, doing 20 damage as the Rogues do pull the Giovanni. They can evolve this Meowth straight away, but they may not want to, as it is, they are going to use the Giovanni here. They're not going to evolve the Meowth. This will allow them to use that Payday. It will do 10 damage, but just as crucially, it allows them to draw a card. And the Rogues now sending it back over to the Constrictors, who play the Kadabra onto the bench. It does get its first energy. Now the Ghastly only requires 1 energy, so they don't have to worry about getting additional energy onto it here. But they play the Professor's Research, they get the second Abra, they get the second LGM, so they've already got all their basic Pokemon in hand, and they're opting to go with the Ghastly. Now the Ghastly line all the way up to the Gengar only requires 1 energy as well. And the Rogues now, having just played that Giovanni, doing that additional 10 damage, they're going to evolve this Meowth into the Persian, and they play the Professor's Research. They still need a second basic Pokemon, and they get one. They get the second Meowth. They actually get the second Persian with that Professor's Research as well, and they put that Meowth onto the bench. But this Persian now in prime position, this Shadow Claw is enough to take the Ghastly off the board, and if they can flip heads with this coin flip, the Constrictors will have to discard a random card from their hand. But fortunately for the Rogues, fortunately for the Constrictors, the Rogues flip a Tails, so that Alakazam in hand is safe, because if that went onto the bench, that would be, into the discard pile, that would be terrible for the Constrictors. It's the LGM being put into the active spot, and they pull the Behem as well, who only also requires 1 energy to go online. With this Mind Jack, it does an additional 20 damage for the benched Pokemon. The Alakazam does additional damage for the energy on the opposing Pokemon, but there it is, 30 damage being done to this active Persian, thanks to that Mind Jack, and this may make the Rogues hesitant to put that Coffin that they just pulled onto the bench, as it's a first energy now being put onto the Meowth, who is now a Persian. They do opt to go with the Coffin, probably well aware that this Persian may not be lasting very long in the active spot, but they're using the Giovanni, get an additional 10 damage, 50 to this Behem, leaving it with only 40 health remaining. And this time they do flip heads with that Shadow Claw, and it is the LGM going into the discard pile from the hand of the Constrictors, and they pull that Behem in time for it to be completely worthless, as the Alakazam gets its second energy as well. It only requires 1 more for that Psychic to be completely overpowered, as the Mind Jack from Behem wipes the Persian off the board, and the Constrictors get their first point here in game 3. They are trying to avoid a clean sweep. They don't want to go into Victory Road suffering such a defeat here in round 9, the final game of regulation season in PokeType League VGC Season A1. That is a mouthful, as the Shadow Claw onto the Behem takes it off the board, and the Kitakami Rogues get their second point, and they're going for that coin flip again. This time they get a Tails, so the Constrictor's hand is safe. They have that Behem, which isn't relevant, but they've got that second Kadabra in hand with that Abra on the bench. But here it is, the Alakazam is online. And they pull the Haunter as well, who has that Will-O-Wisp, only requiring 1 energy. They still need to get energy onto this Alakazam. With this Psychic, it does 60 plus an additional 30 for every energy on the opposing Pokemon, so 120 damage on to that Persian, wipes it off the board. The next point will win this game. The Rogues have already won this series. As they're thinking about who they want to put onto the bench, they go with the Coffin from the Mythical Island set. The Genetic Apex set is on the bench, but they pull the Weezing with the Gas Leak ability, and it only requires 1 energy to start going on the offensive. But with that Gas Leak, it can poison the Alakazam as well, and that Tackle does 30, but it will do an additional 20 because of that weakness, so they could start chipping away here at this Alakazam. 50 damage there being done to the Alakazam, plus the additional 10 thanks to the poisoning. This is great for the rogues, as the Constrictors have just pulled the Gengar. They are going to evolve that Haunter here. They need to think about how they want to address this. Do they want to leave the Alakazam in the active spot? It will only do 90 damage to the Weezing, and that is what they're doing. The rogues are in control. Another 10 damage from the poisoning. And the rogues have just pulled the X speed as well, as this Weezing is in elimination range from this Alakazam. But again, that tackle will do 30 damage. It gets the additional 20. I'm not sure the rogues have realized that though, because usually sides will just go straight for this elimination, and here it is. They're going for the tackle. They know. No, they're really uncertain of what is about to happen. They're clearly forgetting about that weakness and that poisoning, because the rogues are waiting. Otherwise, this is extremely sinister of the darkness types, because they are about to clean sweep the Levia Constrictors as the Constrictors head into Victory Road. This 50 damage, the 10 from the poisoning, and the Kitakami Rogues with a massive win over the Constrictors to finish their season. They will not be going into Victory Road, but they are safe from that wooden crown, as the next time we see you, we will be in Victory Road of Season A1 as the Constrictors manage to stay in the top 5. But with that said, Nidorinos, thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments below what you thought the best card was, and if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like, share, subscribe, but more importantly, always remember, send thanks, and I'll see you when you see me.